Good afternoon. A warm welcome to CARE Ratings webinar on power sector. We had some technical hiccup initially, and I'm sorry for that. The webinar today, the topic is, will power demand growth aid the recovery of DISCOMs? I'm Amod Khanarkar, Senior Director of Ratings and also Head of Infrastructure Ratings at CARE. I'll be host today and I'm also the moderator for this web conference. We have today with us some of the best minds in the industry, and I take pleasure in introducing all of them to you. I'll go in an alphabetical order. Mr. Amal Sinha of BACS. Mr. Sinha is a graduate of Delhi's prestigious SRCC. He's a chartered accountant and a cost accountant with about 33 years of experience. He has worked in various areas of power sector, power distribution, as well, and other corporate side, which is corporate finance, strategy planning, and so on. After working with Escorts for about 15 years and with L&T before that, Mr. Sinha joined BACS Rajdhani Power Limited in 2006, and at present he is the Executive Director and Group CEO of BACS Delhi Power Distribution Business. This company manages a combined consumer base in excess of 4.5 million of consumers, and it's the largest private sector power distribution business in India at a single geographical location. Mr. Sinha, thanks a lot for joining today. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Amoj.
Thank you. Next, we have Ms. Anjuli Chandra of Punjab State Electricity Regulatory Commission. Chandra Madam is an electrical engineer and an MBA. She is also certified energy auditor and certified by BEE. She is an officer of 1978 IES batch. She has a 40 years of rich experience in power sector in almost all possible functions that one can think of. She has had various senior positions in Central Electricity Authority, CEA, Punjab State Electricity Board, DERC. At present, she is holding a charge of a member in Punjab State Electricity Regulatory Commission, PACRC. In the past, she has chaired and has been a member of various task force and committees constituted by Ministry of Power, CEA, CERC, BIS, DERC, and PACRC. She is an acknowledged expert in the power sector and has been conferred with various awards for her contribution to the sector. Madam, thanks a lot for joining in today. It's a pleasure to have you here with us.
Thank you for your kind words.
Thank you, madam. Next, we have Mr. Sinha, P.K. Sinha of PFC. Mr. Sinha has about 32 years of experience in power sector, of which 28 years are with PFC. He has experience spread across the value chain in power sector, including planning, maintenance, financing of generation, transmission, and distribution. At PFC, Mr. Sinha plays a key role in business development, project appraisal, financial modeling, project monitoring, and stress asset resolution. Presently, he is an executive director and he is in charge of PFC's lending operations in the northern region. He also had his lending policy unit in PFC, overseeing the formulation and review of PFC's lending policies. Mr. Sinha, thanks a lot for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you again on with us on this forum. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Nair from Avada. Mr. Vinit Mittal could not make it. He's stuck up somewhere, and Mr. Nair has been kind enough to join in his place. Mr. T.R. Kishore Nair, he heads the renewable energy business at Avada Energy as its chief operating officer and his director on the board. He's an electrical engineer, carries a leadership experience of about 37 years in multiple facets of energy, and in the past has worked with NTPC, BHEL, Reliance, and Welspun. During the last 10 years, he has been closely working with industry association and chambers for policy advocacy and to raise concerns of industry with state government, state as well as central government for the renewable sector. Currently, he is a co-chair of Renewable Energy Council of ASSOCHAM. Mr. Nair, thanks a lot for joining in today. A pleasure you having us here with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Amod.
Mr. Diwan of Haryana Discom, he has been here to rush for a meeting with Chief Minister, and possibly he will join if he gets free from that particular meeting early. Otherwise, unfortunately, we'll have to do without him today. Once again, thanks a lot and very warm welcome to all the panelists and all the participants. Now, few preliminary remarks from my side in terms of what we are planning to do today. What's the theme of webinar? What is it that we will convey? What is it that we will discuss? As you are aware, Indian power sector right now is going through a very dynamic and interesting phase with very changing complexion in terms of generation mix and so on and so forth. This rapid change brings in its own set of challenges, and it's also opportunities. With COVID sort of ebbing down now, the demand for power is on the rise, and as a result of economic activity, we expect it to be continue to remain firm. The DISCOMs, who are fulcrum of fortunes of power sector, are therefore seeing increased activity in their distribution business. But the question therefore is this: that does it mean that these DISCOMs will they be in position to capitalize on this positive uptick? In the past, at times, if the sales have been more, then it has led, unfortunately, to more losses for DISCOMs as a result of low operating efficiency, inadequacy of tariff revisions, and at times, political compulsions. In today's webinar, we'll look at how the power sector as a whole has moved and has performed, and especially how top 10 states by the amount of energy that they sell, how they performed over last couple of years. What does the trend tell us about the future? And these are some of the key things that we will touch upon. Some of the broad level points on which then we would like to hear from experts on the panel. Some of the points they include: what can be done to improve the performance of distribution sector? Has sector developed discipline of complying with the regulatory regime? How do these suppliers, power suppliers or the generators, how they look at the DISCOM risk while entering into PPAs with them? How do the DISCOMs, the state DISCOMs, look at the aspect of a privatization? Will the DISCOMs be able to put their act together? In what time frame, and so on and so forth? In terms of flow today, my colleague Sudhir will make a presentation on CARE's view, post which we will engage in a discussion with the panel. That will be followed by a Q&A with the members of the audience. With that, I hand over to Sudhir to make the presentation. Over to you, Sudhir. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Thanks, Amod. A very good afternoon to all the friends for coming to the busy afternoon today. My name is Sudhir, and I will be making a brief presentation on the various issues in the power distribution space. Here are the key messages, which perhaps as we go along, I would be elaborating in my subsequent slides. How we have structured the presentation is, we have divided into two parts. First part is talking about the aggregate trends in the sector on a few of the performance parameters of the state. And then after, we would discuss about the performance of the top 10 states in terms of energy sold on the same 4 to 5 broad evaluation metrics. So coming on to the first parameter, and before the parameter, perhaps it would be pertinent to talk about the energy demand, which though for the past 4 to 5, 6 years, it was hovering at around 5 to 6%. It suddenly, because of the COVID, had gone down sharply. We see a strong recovery in this demand in the current financial year, and over the next couple of years, the demand is expected to remain firm. Everything remaining okay in terms of at least the COVID side of it. In terms of Ministry of Power and further CEA study, they have projected the power demand to further grow up to around 2000 plus billion units from current 1200 billion units, assuming a growth of around 7% on each year over the next 8 years. While it looks very aggressive, but as we speak today, these are the broad estimates which the CEA has kind of forecasted for the power demand. The long-term demand drivers for this kind of demand, which is projected, is apart from the other issues, the industrialization of the country, the rural electrification, the power for all scheme, and the increase in the demand around that, electric transportation, that is EV, and digitalization of the economy. Since our topic of the webinar today was recovering energy demand, paradoxically, it is less encouraging for the DISCOM for each unit of energy sold. because of the fact that they are in losses. So incrementally per unit basis, they make a loss. So hence, the point of paradoxically less encouraging for the DISCOM. In terms of aggregate trends on the AT&C side, as we see the state AT&C losses, they are upwards of 20%. Are they range bound, higher than Uday targets of 15%, and materially higher than what private licensees have been able to post, which is lower than 9% on an all India basis, and they have been improving. It would be worthy to note that private DISCOMs, because of the small area they operate into and the superior demographic profile, are able to have the such low losses. Not to take away from them the superior performance from them, but they have the inherent advantage of superior demography as well as the geographical advantage which they have. In terms of trajectory of all India AT&C loss, it has been improving, but over the last 3 years, as I discussed earlier, it has been range bound and is hovering around 21 to 22%. In terms of cost recovery, which is denoted by ACS ARR gap, here and also the kind of indication is same. The private sector have been able to give better number vis-a-vis the state. However, in terms of private, one more caveat that a lot of private companies, they book income recoverable from future tariff in their revenues. This income recoverable future tariff is in a way, it is approved by the higher regulatory forum, or there is an opinion of legal authority around it. But it is not approved by the regulatory commission. So as to say, it is not fully approved also, but private sector, because of this particular accounting in their revenues, they at times show better ACS ARR recovery. So on only a level, it has been also kind of range bound. It has increased or deteriorated in FY 19 and then perhaps further improved. So range bound. In terms of subsidy, which is one of the important parameters wherein we evaluate the DISCOMs, over the past 3 years, as we see in the top chart on the orange bars, it has been increasing from 14.6% as a percentage of expense to 14.9 to 15.8. So each of the 3 years, it has been improving. On the lower side, we have also tried to show what is the quantum of subsidy. It has been around 1.2 lakh crore in FY20, which is a very significant amount. And in terms of CAGR growth over this 3-year period of 18, 19, and 20, it has grown at double the rate of revenue at around 13.8%. So that, according to us, is a significant takeaway in terms of subsidy dependence, which is increasing over the past few years. Now coming on to the second part of the presentation, which talks about the evaluation of top 10 states. We have selected these states on the basis of the units sold, and these 10 states account for 71% of the all India sales. So they by and large give a very good picture of how the sector is performing. And what we have done is we have taken both the FY20 number, which is the absolute number, latest number, and also we have tried to see the trend which has been emerging over the last 3 years. The period on which we have evaluated these entities is from FY18 to FY20. And for FY21, unfortunately, we don't have the numbers given the kind of opacity which is around the sector. While over the years, we have seen that the transparency in terms of numbers has been very much. We have seen the central government intend in terms of having a wide array of websites to give the numbers, but in terms of financial availability of financial numbers, it is still which takes some time. So these are the 4 parameters on which we would be evaluating all these entities. Apart from this, we would also be kind of commenting on the payable period which each of these states have. So coming on to the first operational efficiency parameter, which is AT&C. And this is the single most important efficiency parameter in our opinion. Then we have kind of organized all the 10 states on the basis of a better performance to a moderation or deterioration in the performance. So on the left hand side you will see UP, which has got -7 to 8% of performance, which means that UP has improved in terms of AT&C loss reduction. And this black dot above that indicates the absolute AT&C loss, which is indicated at the right hand axis. So wherein we see the UP, MP and Rajasthan, they are among the states with high level of AT&C. And in terms of improvement, we see UP has the best, followed by TN, AP and Punjab. A clear kind of number with observation which is there in this is Karnataka and Maharashtra, which have got relatively better performance. They have deteriorated over the last 3 years on AT&C number, while they have got still the number under control. But this is one of the observation. Now going to the next part, we also try to further drill down the AT&C into how the billing and collection efficiency has become in both the on both these parameters. And herein we have divided all these numbers basis the average, which entities are faring average than all India average, and which are higher than that. Herein we see clearly that on a positive side, none of the entities which we see which are lower than all India average, on the left hand side if you see declining and stagnant, we see no entity there, meaning that the entities which are having lower billing efficiency on a all India basis, lower than all India average, they are showing an improving trend in terms of billing efficiency over FY18 to FY20. So the billing efficiency now has been better for these 10 states as a whole. Secondly, none of the entity is in the orange rectangle, so to say, which says that the billing efficiency is low and collection efficiencies is also lower, both in absolute as well as trend basis. On the positive side, Gujarat leads the pack, and they have been performing better on both the absolute and absolute billing efficiency as well as the trend which is there over the past 3-year figure. So now moving on to the next part, which is ACS ARR gap. Herein also we had organized the states from best ACS ARR gap, which means from profit to loss. Gujarat has got the profitable operation, and hence they are on the first in the packing order. Last is Tamil Nadu. Again, we can see Maharashtra and Karnataka, which have got a fairly deterioration in terms of the cost coverage, which is we have marked through an arrow. On the right hand side, we have shown the relative position, and the figures in herein we have divided the cost coverage into 3 parts: 0, 1 to 0, and higher than 0, which means while moderate performance also in a way from financial angle would be a loss, but for the sake of simplicity we have divided into 3 parts, which is 0 means profit, 1 to 0 means moderate performance, and high is area of concern. And within that we have also tried to kind of bifurcate or trifurcate into improving, stable and deteriorating. Clearly Tamil Nadu has got numbers wrong on both the parameters. They have got high ACS ARR gap. At the same time, it is deteriorating also, and hence appearing on the right bottom, left bottom of the grid, which is presented on the right side of the screen. Coming on to the next part, which is the trend in the tariff subsidy and realization. We have organized the states from lowest subsidy as a percentage of revenue to the highest in green bars. The yellow bars show the realization of the subsidy billed versus realized. So herein the 4 states, which is Telangana, Rajasthan, Karnataka and MP, they have shown lesser realization of the subsidy billed. Among these, Rajasthan has got the weakest recovery, which is around 50 to 50 odd percentage. during FY20. So this was the absolute. Now we all also see the relative mapping of based on the subsidy parameter, and then trend which is there over the last 3 years. So herein we see that MP and Rajasthan, they have got subsidy realization trend during the 3-year period as declining. At the same time, they have got highest share of subsidy in their overall revenue, and hence they have been marked with red. So clearly they kind of stand apart in the weak performance. On the right hand side, as we can see, Gujarat has shown good performance. Karnataka, I want to highlight the audience attention to. They have fared a bit low, and they are marked with amber or light orange, so to say. They have subsidy realization trend which has been improving, but their subsidy as a percentage of overall revenue, that has been a bit more, and hence there are issues around it. Coming to the fourth parameters on which we also saw the all these 10 states ka discom. This is just a fact. We have just presented that in terms of timeliness of both tariff petition filing as well as tariff order receipt, which is 30th November and 1st April respectively, how these discoms of 10 states have performed. We would see that the first 4 states, they have been very timely in terms of in all these 3 years under observation. They have filed their tariff petition timely, which are AP, Karnataka, Maharashtra, and Punjab. While Telangana had not filed for past 3 years, and UP and Telangana, there are instances of delayed filing. Having said that, we do not mean that they have not filed at all. This is just a number to show that how many of them are timely, and just a fact. On the right hand side, we have shown the timeliness in receipt of tariff order. And as we can see from this graph, Maharashtra and AP, the regulators have been giving orders timely before 1st April or 1st April. While Tamil Nadu and Rajasthan, we see 2 or 3 times of the past 3 years where they have not given the tariff orders timely. Coming to the trends in payable days across DISCOM and top 10 states, we have also shown all India average and organized all these states from lowest to the highest. The Maharashtra, we have seen improved payable days, while the other states, all of them, they have shown deterioration in their payable days. This is a change over FY18. So in 3-year period, all have fared. So this has also led to, in a way, had COVID not been there, my sense is this Atmanirbhar Bharat scheme still would have come in one way or the other, maybe a year later. But the trends in terms of higher payable days were evident from maybe 2 years back prior to COVID. Coming to the essence of all these 5-7 parameters which we just discussed, we tried to organize them to show the audience some kind of a clear picture on where all these states have been on these 4 points. While this is not a very elaborate way to assess the DISCOMs, but it gives a fairly good direction of where the DISCOMs are headed. And we have organized all these 4 parameters on 4 points, which is healthy, denoted by green, light green as moderate, orange as need improvement, and red as area of concern. So clearly the Rajasthan, Tamil Nadu, Madhya Pradesh, Telangana, on majority of these evaluation indicators, they have shown the area of concern. Gujarat, as we all know, have fared very strongly on most of the parameters. I think in terms of regulatory side, in terms of timeliness, we could not give them green, but otherwise it's a fairly strong state. Maharashtra continues, while they have got ACS and ARR issues, and AT&C was also deteriorated, so that became the green. So by and large, this gives a very good indication of where the states are. AP is an exception. I think in terms of AP, because of a lot of soft parameters which we could not score them, and there was a restriction in terms of evaluating on these 4 parameters only, and hence the 2 greens there. maybe further when we drill down the say for example loss and regulatory income, there could be some other story. Coming to the penultimate part of my presentation, we also try to show the recent developments in the sector. The liquidity support scheme has most of the disbursement already made. This figure which we have quoted is I think somewhere in start of the September. My sense is late September we have still got more disbursement coming in. That has clearly helped the most of the generation companies. In terms of privatization, the scheme was announced last year, and we see that there is very little progress. Entire process is marred in legal issues. Only Chandigarh has been the success story so far, which has been awarded to CSE subsidiary Eminent Electricity Distribution. And the revamped scheme which has been announced by the government is a very fairly large scheme, 3 lakh crore, out of which around 1 lakh crore which is from the gross budgetary support. Rest would be supported by the financial institution to the DISCOMs. I think with this we would be coming on to the last part of the presentation, which is the sector outlook. We believe that the base energy demand is expected to grow at around 6 to 7%, which is fairly good given the lockdown which we had gone through in 2 months in the start of the year. Revenue gap is expected to widen because of the fact that there are a lot of industries and commercial activities which came to an halt and leading to subsidized segment getting more electricity, and hence we expect the revenue gap to widen in 21 and 22. The debt is expected to increase in FY21 due to the higher accumulated losses and the other initiative as I just talked about. So all in all, over the past couple of years, the performance of DISCOMs have shown a mixed result. Contrary to the popular belief of negatives in the sector, there are a few positive also to the entire story. Firstly, the central government has shown continuous intent and support to make the sector viable. From the state perspective, we have witnessed more timeliness in terms of financial reporting, and which has indicated the improvement in systems and processes. Moreover, as we have seen in the other slides, we can see many of the DISCOMs are filing tariff petition and getting the tariff orders also in the timely fashion. We believe that with the new revamped distribution scheme, if this scheme is implemented in right earnest, would have a far-reaching impact on the performance of the DISCOMs. With this, I end my presentation and hand it over to Amod for further proceedings. Thank you.
Thanks, Sudhir. Thanks for your presentation. With that, we will go to the panel discussion. Already we are about 40 minutes into the discussion. Post panel discussion, we'll have a Q&A with the audience. So, Chandra Madam, my first question is to you. And to improve the performance of the sector and more so for distribution sector, the regulator, which is a sort of a proxy for competition, acts as a sort of a check and balance, and always tries to push for efficiency, and especially by spelling out the normative numbers, and it says a TND and so on. The TND numbers that which are every time notched down a bit so as to encourage improvement in the performance. At times the DISCOMs, they complain that it's stiff and we are not able to achieve it and so on and so forth. So I would like to understand your perspective on that. Being a regulator, it's important to understand how do you balance out the interest of various stakeholders, and so that we have improvement at the same time. DISCOMs also for their genuine losses are not too much penalized.
Well, the TND loss reduction trajectory is fixed by the regulator, seeing the past performance of the DISCOMs and the potential to reduce further in the next control period. We usually have a multi-year tariff regime, which constitutes a control period of say 3 or 5 years. So the loss reduction trajectory is given for that period. And basically it takes into account the past reduction as well as what is the potential to do it in future. The regulator fixes it after considering these points. However, the reduction is within the hands of the DISCOM. The targets which are fixed are not very easy, but they're also not too stringent to be not achievable. If the DISCOMs make a conscious effort to do that. So, the T&D losses consist of technical as well as commercial losses. And the technical losses can be reduced by the DISCOM by, identifying high loss sections by doing system studies over overloaded feeders, overloaded transformers, and by planning how to go about reduction of technical losses. And they can ask for the capex for that, and it is the duty of the regulator to provide adequate capital expenditure to the DISCOM to reduce the technical losses. There are schemes of Government of India which enable reduction of technical losses like IPDS and DDU, GJY and other schemes. So funds can be obtained from there as well as through capital expenditure, which the regulators allow, which is commensurate with the loss reduction schemes. However, it is the commercial losses which the DISCOMs, it is easier to reduce commercial losses, but there are certain vested interests, political interests, social interests, and law and order problems, which make it difficult to reduce the commercial losses. Otherwise, I would say that reduction of commercial losses is much easier than reduction of technical losses. If effort is put in, the staff of the DISCOM is sensitized to do that, and technological interventions are used. By technological interventions, I mean that the human interface should be least with the consumer. Your meter reading should come automatically, or it should be downloaded through various devices, and there should be no attempt by the consumer and the staff to get together for increasing the losses. So the targets I do not think are infeasible. Generally regulators fix a trajectory which is achievable.
Thanks a lot, madam. That's actually very, very frank answer, I would say. And you mentioned, I mean, apart from other things, the commercial losses, the challenges that one sees over there in terms of pressures and so on and so forth. It's a bit of a tricky area. I'm sure all stakeholders try to somehow answer, and I mean, we all of us live in the real world, and to that extent, it's a difficult task. But thanks a lot. Thanks for your answer, Mr. Sinha, Amal Sinha. I wanted to quickly again touch on the aspect of AT&C and cash collection and so on. And over there, in terms of the subsidy from government, there is a talk of DBT, and which has been implemented in other sectors, and possibly can it be sort of brought into the power sector as well? So, what is your take on that? How do you think that will help? How likely you think it is, and so on? You are a DISCOM, and possibly because you operate in Delhi, you may have a bit of a different experience. But I'd like to understand your perspective on that.
See, as far as AT&C loss is concerned, we had our own experience in terms of loss reduction. We are operating at almost 7% today. The meter to cash cycle, as is being mentioned, is something which is very critical. And the first thing which we did was the introduction of the electronic meters way back in 2004-05. And that really helped to do a better metering. And as Madam was pointing out, we have downloadable meters where human intervention is minimum. And of course, linked to the better billing quality is the collection efficiency, which is there in terms of what are the various options and how you actually are able to get the consumers to pay. So there are various things which you can do in terms of making ease of doing business for the consumers and for the company also, so that consumers are willing to pay and they pay you on the right date and time. So meter to cash cycle is very important, and besides the technical interventions which are very critical in terms of technical loss reduction. And going forward, if you see smart meter introduction, which is now time bound, will definitely aid and help in reducing the commercial losses. But it has its own challenges, and both technical challenges, communication challenges. But the good thing is government has taken a note of this. There are very, very strong policy support, financial support, and a will to do it. So the political will and social will becomes very important when you are driving this kind of social, I would say, initiative, which is a very large number of public interest is involved. In terms of DBT, in what our experience is that we have been giving subsidy based on what the government has announced for the consumers of Delhi. Our model is more on linked with direct benefit transfer to consumers, which is being done through the bill itself, and whatever subsidy is passed on to the consumer through the bill, the amount which is higher than the subsidy amount the consumer pays, and what is the subsidy amount we get reimbursement from the government. And as per the provisions of the Act, the subsidy what has to be passed through us, it has to be paid in advance by the state government. So if the government is in a position to pay you and reimburse you the subsidy in advance as per the provisions of the Act, I think this would definitely work very well. It has worked very well in Delhi, at least what we have seen. And keeping in view the financial position of the state and government and the state DISCOM, this would be something which would require support, both at the government level, at the financial support level, which would be required. But that definitely aids in helping for if the subsidy is being properly and transparently being dealt with. It definitely encourages consumers to come into the billing net, show their consumption, what they're using, and avail the subsidy. So consumer awareness and education is also very critical, that how the subsidy will impact each individual household. So that also involves a lot of campaign to be raised in terms of awareness among the consumer. What is the subsidy, how it will be passed on to them, so that they feel confident and they feel comfortable, because it is a kind of a mindset issue in terms of loss reduction. What we have seen, many consumers don't want to pay because they are afraid that the bills would be very high and things, and so we need to add a social dimension to the whole subject. And once the consumer is fairly aware what are their rights and what are the subsidy which accrue to them, they can probably manage their consumption in a manner so that they can maximize on the subsidy. So according to me, the policy, the framework, everything is right. We need to bring the consumers on the same platform, and we need to educate to make the entire ecosystem work the way we want.
I couldn't agree more with you. It's a couple of very important points you touched upon: the billing net, the discipline, the consumer knows how much he's getting from government by way of subsidy. Fact that the DISCOMs are also arms of government in terms of helping it to achieve its socio-economic objectives. So with that, I think very valid points. So with that, I'll come to Mr. Sinha, PK Sinha, and Sinha Saab, your organization is one of the biggest lenders to the DISCOM sectors and its improvement, AT&C losses or whatever. I mean, it has a sort of a direct bearing in terms of how to go about doing things. There have been various initiatives in the past for improvement of the performance, for reduction of AT&C and so on. And latest, we have this revamped distribution sector scheme. So what do you make of it? How is it any different from Uday and a couple of schemes which came earlier? In your opinion, do you think you'll be in a position to make success of that? Is it something that I wanted to know? Mr. Sinha? Possibly.
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't hear you. My audio went got disconnected.
No, so the point that I was making was that PFC is one of the biggest lender to the sector, to the distribution sector, and any improvement therein has a direct bearing in terms of how you go about doing things. In the past, government has brought in multiple schemes for addressing the challenges of the sector, Uday and so on and so forth, financial restructurings. Before that, latest one being the revamped distribution scheme. How do you read that scheme? What do you make of that scheme? Do you think that it will be successful? If yes, why yes? If no, why no? Your opinion, to the extent that you can respond.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Amod, for giving me an opportunity. We have got 2-3 experts out here on the panel. Ms. Anjali and Amal Sinha, they're experts in distribution. But from the lender's perspective, I would like to say that see, the government has been planning for and doing a lot for improvement of efficiency in the distribution sector, right from last 20 years, right from introducing APDP scheme way back in 2001, then Electricity Act in 2003, and lastly IPDS and RAPDRP, all those things, and now this revamped distribution scheme, which government has announced. The entire objective of all these efforts that government has been making since last 20 years is to improve the operational efficiency of the DISCOMs. But still, after so much effort, the all India average if T&D losses, AT&C losses are around 22%. See, so this revamped distribution scheme is focusing on the reduction in further AT&C losses to less than 15%. When we have DISCOMs like BSES over here in Delhi, which has an AT&C losses of around say 7%. So we can easily achieve that by improving the operational efficiency. And of course, this revamped distribution scheme will certainly give a boost to that, and it can be achieved if it is implemented in a true manner. Some grant is also there, which is an attraction for the DISCOMs to implement this scheme, and the subsidies for the meters, smart meters that they are required to implement, all those things are there. But our concern is that as the lenders, we look at the gap, the average cost of supply and average cost of realization. That is a major factor that is still is of our concern, and it should be concern of all. On an average, if you see at a national level, it is around 6 rupees 15 paisa cost of supply, and cost of average realization cost is around 5 rupees 85 paisa. So there is still gap of more than 30 paisa. So until this gap is balanced, made zero, then only the DISCOMs can, and it is in the positive direction, then only the DISCOMs can improve their revenues, and it will attract more lenders and more economical funding to the project DISCOMs. As long as the gaps are there, high losses are there, the DISCOMs are at loss because they are getting loan debts at a higher rate. The lenders are not comfortable with this. And the subsidy, the tariff subsidy, that is also a very critical aspect, because that we have been discussing in the presentation also. And what we have been seeing is that we have the DISCOMs are okay, but even the GENCOs, the state GENCOs are not able to clear the dues. They are finding it very difficult to clear the dues because of they are not being paid by the DISCOMs, and DISCOMs are not paying them because their subsidies have gone up in some of the states in our country, we have a subsidy of around 25,000 crores. Discoms, which the state has to pay to the Discoms has to pay to the Gencos, and out of that, around say more than around 50% is the subsidy which is due from the state government. So a lot of these are the factors which are affecting our lending to the. So the efficiency of Discoms is also affecting the operational aspect of the Gencos and the transfers. It's not only the Discoms that is getting affected. The state Gencos, 100% of their power is being sold to the state Discoms, and if the state Discoms does not pay them on time, they are getting affected. So the subsidy realization is something which has to be taken care of, and I think the government is also thinking in that direction in the Electricity Act amendment bill that is coming up, and for direct payment of subsidy to the consumer, after looking at the success that we have achieved in case of LPG scheme, and that is being implemented. So that way, think it can be done, and this is what is being thought of. And once it is done, then subsidy will go directly to the consumers, and the Discoms can look at the rate, the power from a Gencos, where they can get an economical power from the Gencos. They will be open to give pay to the Gencos.
So we also sincerely hope that this new scheme becomes successful. The issue of ACS ARR, that somehow doesn't seem to be going away after all these years, and all of us have spent so many almost decades of time and experience in the sector, and some of these challenges is unfortunately they continue. Hopefully with this particular scheme, including smart metering and so on, and government's thrust and push that will hopefully some of those things will really work.
State government's push is also required for the revamped distribution scheme, because state government also need to understand.
And in fact, I want to touch upon one important point, but Mr. Nair also, I think he has to rush out, unfortunately.
Yes, please. Yeah.
So, Mr. Nair, very quickly, there are 2-3 things I wanted to understand from you. One was when you set up a power plant, a solar or a wind farm, and you're more in solar. What is it that you look in Discom in terms of which Discom to choose, which Discom to pick up for entering into a PPA? That was my one question. And second question, quickly, are you seeing a differential treatment to a solar vis-a-vis a wind energy supplier from the Discoms? We hear something like that from some of our clients. So I wanted your perspective on these two things.
Thank you, Amod, and I'm sorry I'll have to go out for a meeting which was already scheduled earlier.
But yes.
Quickly to respond to your question, see, when we bid for projects today, the bidding is more or less competitive based bidding on competitive tariff based bidding. So we have the option to choose between the Discoms, and our first option is to go for central utilities or the Discoms which are financially stable, because ultimately we always look at our realization of payments. So that's why that certainly comes as the first option, that we always look for highly rated, which has got high credit rating for when we are taking up projects. This not only affects our planning, but when we are going for funding for these projects, the funding institutions or the lenders will also give us better financial terms if our procurers are having a better credit rating. So that certainly is an important factor when we bid for these projects. But sometimes we also take some risk in terms of selecting the Discoms, because even though the credit rating is slightly lower than the best rated Discoms, but then you get a better tariff in those projects. So even if you account for some sort of adjustments in terms of realization, in how many months you are getting the realization, you still can take a chance, but it is basically a financial call. But certainly when we bid for projects, our first priority is to go for good rated Discoms. But in addition to that, I don't think it is a bigger risk today, because in many cases there are a lot of what I can say, the The guarantees have been given. It is being enforced by the central government that you cannot make delays in the payments, because the LC has been made as mandatory, and the central government has said that you cannot dispatch the power unless the LC is opened. The state regulatory, not regulatory commission, the state load dispatch centers have been asked not to dispatch any power unless the LC is open, and there is already a late payment surcharge is already in place. So all these are the actions taken by the government to protect the payment security mechanism. So with that, if all those things are introduced in letter and spirit, I don't think there is any major risk that is coming into play in selecting the DISCOMs. But certainly that is a major aspect, and the lenders should also take that into cognizance that ultimately solar or renewable energy is the critical energy priority sector for the government as well as for the lenders. So there should be certain mechanism that is to support the payment security mechanism and the IPPs also. So that is one aspect. I missed the second question.
The second one was, is there a differential treatment at times between solar and wind?
I don't think there is any differential treatment mechanism as far as the DISCOMs are concerned. The only thing is that most of these wind projects were coming in the feed-in tariff regime. And as far as the dispatch is concerned, the wind is coming up in a short span of maybe 2-3 months, where the wind is blowing, particularly in the monsoon months. So that time there could be some constraints on the grid curtailment could be there because of the evacuation restrictions. So that is something which is troubling us, both the solar and wind developers. But as far as the treatment is concerned, I don't think there is any differential treatment for solar and wind developers.
Okay, got it. Thanks a lot. Thanks for your response.
Can I take leave? My apologies. Already the call has come that I had to join that.
No,
So
fair enough. Thanks a lot. Thanks for joining today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. Nice meeting all of you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Nayak.
So Chandra madam, I have next question for you. Can you hear us? Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So the regulatory discipline as far as DISCOMs are concerned has been improving, and thanks to all the regulators, both at center and state. But at times we still find the filings don't happen, and if filings don't happen, then the regulator is also helpless, and then you start getting into the sector starts getting into trouble in terms of we really don't know what type of assets or regulatory assets are building up, liabilities are building up, and what type of tariff shocks possibly come in, and so on and so forth. So there's a provision for the regulator to make a suo motu review in case of a non-filing of a tariff petition or the ARR filings. So how do you respond to that? How do you see that? But we don't see too many of these things have actually happened from regulator side. So
Yeah, in most of the states, the DISCOMs are filing their petitions. Like in Punjab, I've been in Delhi also. The DISCOMs have been filing petitions on time. But yes, there are states where the DISCOMs are not filing. And it is the regulator's duty to either give a suo motu tariff or to induce the DISCOM to file a petition. So that would be possible, either by taking the expenditures are known to the regulator, he can give a suo motu tariff increase or decrease. And if on the flip side, I would say if a regulator gives a decrease, then the DISCOM would very quickly file the petition. But to be fair to the DISCOMs, yes, a regulator seeing the increase in power purchase costs and the expenditures and this increase in wholesale price index and the CPI and WPI, they can determine an increase considering what has been in the past and how much the demand has increased and working out the tariff on their own. But it would always be better for the DISCOM to file it, because expenditures and power purchase costs and other employee costs, etc., can be more realistically determined by the regulator if the DISCOM files its petitions in time. But yes, if they don't, it is our duty to give a tariff even if they don't file the petition.
But it's heartening to hear that most of them are doing the filings almost in a timely manner, or maybe a couple of months here and there. There are few states where there's a bit of a long gap, but it's good to hear that the things are moving. And frankly speaking, over a period of time, I think that's only improved. The regulatory deportment of all the stakeholders involved, be it the DISCOM, be it the state government, be it the regulator itself, the whole system has been nicely evolving. I must say that. Sinha Saab, we have two gentlemen with Sinhas here. So Amal Sinha Saab, I mean, my question is to you. The Electricity Amendment Act, and which PK Sinha ji sort of touched upon. There are going to be far-reaching implications. If it becomes an act and if it gets implemented. So as a veteran in the sector, can you highlight some two, three features of that which you think are doable, and which would lead a quick and a far-reaching impact on the sector?
No, as for any business environment, competition is always to be encouraged, and I think Electricity Act is primarily doing that. The new proposed amendments. So it will help to encourage competition coming into the distribution space, which is lacking today. It is, essentially controlled. So there would be competing private DISCOMs with the state DISCOMs, and also private DISCOMs with other private DISCOMs.
Yes.
So definitely, if there is competition, there would be efficiency in all aspects of operation. That is what is expected from any competitive environment. Of course, there would be some issues which needs to be resolved, which I would call as legacy issues or legacy challenges, whether in terms of because we have long-term PPA contracts. So how the PPA would be divided between the incumbent DISCOM and the new entrant. Similarly, there are regulatory issues in terms of various issues which are pending in various courts. There are regulatory assets which have been recognized, which have not been recognized. So how those things has to be divided amongst the the current incumbent and the new incumbent. Largely the network of the existing incumbent DISCOM would be used. So how the network charges would be levied on the new DISCOM which is coming in. There are certain new definitions which are coming in terms of defining a revenue district. So some DISCOMs may be following a different parameter of evaluation. So those mapping of your network to that extent would be required. So a lot of groundwork could be required. I think the role and of the regulator will become more important in an environment like this, because the regulator has to provide a level playing field to all the DISCOMs operating in their area, whether it is the incumbent or the new DISCOM. So that providing of level playing field requires a lot of mathematics also to be done in terms of how the assets and liabilities would be shared. But these things are, there is always a learning phase, and then you try to actualize your learnings. So I presume that whenever the amendment comes, there would be a transition period, and there should be certain provisions to facilitate any transition from the existing norms to the new norms, so that everyone is comfortable. Otherwise, there is a lot of speculation and doubts that what will happen and what will not happen. Secondly, uniformity of across all the states, because there is an opportunity for private DISCOMs to operate in different states. There is some overlapping, it seems, from the draft, the amendments which have been proposed. There would be some overlapping between the state regulator and the central regulator, how that division of responsibilities will take shape. But all said and done, the intention is very fair, and definitely it will be for the interest of the sector and for the consumers at large if we are encouraging competition. Also, we are bringing in more structural changes in the regulatory framework, which is always desirable, and it is good. And many such proposals have been put in the Amendment Act. So I, as a organization, as an individual, definitely look forward. And the important thing is, while these amendments are being introduced, some major changes are already being witnessed by the sector. So a lot of things are going to come to any DISCOM, whether it is the introduction of smart meters, whether it is the introduction of electric vehicles, whether it is the integration of renewables, the legacy PPAs, and all these issues are going to come at the same time. You have a target for the reduction of AT&C losses. You have to manage your subsidies better. You have to manage your finances better. So I think the DISCOM really has to prepare for it. And I feel there is a lot needs to be done, so that the implementing DISCOMs need to strengthen their management capability, their capacity building in terms of managing these transformational, or I would say revolutionary changes coming at the same time. But I'm quite sure that when so many things are going to come, every DISCOM would take an advantage of whatever they can best do, and things are going to improve and better for the sector and for the country as a whole.
Well said. I mean, we also really hope so. I mean, way back when Electricity Act 2003 came, and then, frankly speaking, competition and open access was the real buzzword there, or most important operative word. Not exactly that all of that has been very successful in terms of implementation. We hope these amendments really work out, and they come into place soon. So, Sinha Saab, PK Sinha ji, one question that, and maybe this may be the last question that we do as a panel, and subsequently we'll throw it open to the audience. One quick question I had was, the working capital challenges, they actually could again increase, as far as what I mean to say is the working capital requirement of the DISCOMs. Recently, Atmanirbhar package and some of the reliefs that has come through, consumed, and possibly it's over. So how do you see that? How do you see the demand for working capital funds from the sector? How can they address that? How can your organization be of help there? Is something that I wanted to touch upon.
Well, the Atmanirbhar scheme is there, and it's still going on. But my basic thing is that if the DISCOMs are efficient, they don't need all this support from the government. So basic thing is that they need to be efficient. You see, most of the DISCOMs, the efficient ones, the highly rated ones, as per the list of DISCOMs which has been, ministry has been publishing, the Gujarat DISCOMs and all, they are not using all these funds. Gujarat has not taken any of these Atmanirbhar, because they can manage their working capital themselves on their own. So basic thing is that they need to be efficient, and if they reduce the AT&C losses and all, they can they don't need this support from the government. Of course, this support is only for the weaker DISCOMs, sort of. But I didn't wanted to use this word, but yes, this is a fact which is there. And some of but yes, if as long as there are dues, and if they are clearing dues on time, they won't be required. But working capital, you see, with this revamped distribution scheme, if they implement it in a true sense, this will also reduce their requirement from the support from the state governments.
Great. Well said. I mean, frankly speaking, that's the real key, that improvement, and as you said, and as we said, so many schemes have come to for the relief of the sector way back starting from 97, 98 onwards. Temporary relief, sometimes they have led to improvements, but sector still continues to reel. I mean, I think unless that real improvements happen, and hopefully they do, because the challenges are quite significant in terms of really achieving those improvements. So thanks for that. With that, maybe Sudhir, we can throw the discussion open to the audience and then take questions from the members of the audience. So,
Yeah.
can I request the audience to any questions that they may have, to key it in the window that is provided on your screen, and if it is directed to any particular panelist, you may please indicate so.
Yeah.
So if any questions have already come, Sudhir.
Yeah. There is one question which has come from Mr. Rahul Jain, and I think this is for Mr. P.K. Sinha. He's saying, do you think DISCOM would not be stuck with more debt in case grant is converted into debt in case of non-compliance of target parameters? This is pertaining to this revamped distribution sector scheme. So the question is, again, I'm repeating, DISCOM would be stuck with more debt in case grant is converted into debt in case of non-compliance of target parameters. We have seen in Uday, there have been instances of not being able to comply with the target parameters. The same could also turn out in this case, and hence DISCOM would be with more debt. So any sense on that, Mr. Sinha?
So see, that is what the revamped distribution is being planned in the manner that such things should not come up, because it's a very time bound and measurable parameters that has to be taken at each and every step. So, and the fund flow or the grant flow will happen only, initial grant is around 10%, and after achievement and the third party report, then only the balance grant will go. So if the utility is confident to implement the scheme in its true manner, then there's no point in getting this grant converted into debt and getting more burden. Rather, they will be incentivized with this scheme. Thank you.
Okay. The next question has come for Madam Chandra, and this is around open access. I think there have been a lot of issues, and the true spirit of open access is not there. So the question is, what measures can be win-win for both developers as well as DISCOM in terms of open access being implemented in a true spirit? So what are the measures to have this win-win situation for both developers as well as the DISCOMs, and can be easily implemented also? So some thoughts around that.
Well, our regulations are there on open access, and if the developers as well as the DISCOMs follow these regulations, then there should be no problem in implementing open access. But sometimes the developers do not give the complete information, and sometimes the DISCOMs also, I agree, delay in giving open access, because DISCOMs usually take time. They are public DISCOMs, so the delay can be reduced if by the DISCOMs, and then for the generator they would like to give open access because they are getting power. But for a consumer, maybe the open access is somewhat delayed because he's going out of the net of the distribution utility. But we do prescribe timelines for giving open access.
Okay. I think the next question is for Mr. Sinha, and the question is that several state DISCOMs in India are still, RPO non-compliant. What do you see, and how do you see this RPO mechanism being successfully implemented? I think the need is right, Ernest, in terms of Indian commitment to green energy. So how do you see this non-compliance of RPO by several DISCOM? I think you can speak on not for other DISCOMs, but generally speaking, what is your sense on this non-compliance of RPO? What is leading to that?
I have to answer this.
There is a question on RPO compliance, but since you can only speak for your company, But generally speaking, on the RPO side, we have seen there is an issue around non-compliance. So in your view, what are the reasons behind these non-compliance for RPO obligations?
See, as the renewable is picking up, of course, we have crossed 100 gigawatt now. This is something which every state is tying up. The rate of average rate for solar, wind, and hybrid is coming to almost 2 rupees 50 paisa and 2 rupees 60 paisa. So definitely there is an opportunity of cost optimization for every DISCOM, and one can definitely look for tying up or integration of renewable into the total power purchase portfolio. There is obviously there is variability of supply because there are different time areas in which the renewable solar or wind would come. So the DISCOM has to first align their power demand requirements and power availability in the right portfolio. So that could be one issue where planning and more understanding is required, that how you can mix the power portfolio. So this could be one of the operational challenges. The other is there are already long-term PPAs. Of course, government has initiated various steps in terms of reducing the technical minimum in which you can operate, so that there is some headroom of tying up for renewable power. So that is another opportunity, because now you can work with the conventional power generators on a lower technical minimum, and then you can utilize your solar and wind, because these are must-run plants, so they have to be used. So there has to be a properly balancing or mix. So I essentially see it as one of the planning challenges which is there in terms of how you can mix your portfolio. The second is how you can manage your legacy PPAs along with the renewable. And of course, these are must-run plants, and these are mostly coming in the private sector, these renewable plants. So they would be very, very diligent so that payment security mechanism is maintained. So those issues have to be resolved at ground level. So I think initially there was, because this RPO obligation is there now for few years now. Initially there was resistance, but now slowly things have been realized that keeping in view various requirements of environment, climate, and also the push which is being given to the renewable. So this integration at a broader level will happen. If it will happen at the macro level, definitely it will happen at the state level. So it is, I think, again a transition. We should not get impatient. This is something which will become very, very real in the next few years. As far as penalty is concerned, that is something to ensure accountability and discipline, which is also right, because if you are penalized, then of course you have to think before you do any non-compliance. But DISCOMs would be weighing their penalty and the other aspects, and then must be taking a call. But according to me, this scale of integration of renewable will happen with the conventional as we go forward, and the RPO target will not be only seen as a target. It is something which would be requirement which can be effectively used to manage your load at different points of time also. And there are other ancillary facilities which also will come up, whether for balancing this renewable, which is the battery storage and other aspects. So all these things combined together will make it a firm power as we are getting from the conventional. So when the concept of firm power will gain momentum, then things will further catch up with all these state DISCOM. That is what my broad view is.
Yeah. I think we are already out of time. I will take one last question. I think the anyone of you can answer. The question is that what is the take of the experts in relation to the losses due to open access to DISCOM? What I can make out this question is that if open access is implemented in right earnest, how much would the losses to which are there for DISCOM increase? Because all industrial customers or commercial, perhaps they will move out to through open access. Anybody can take this.
But possibly the aspect of a cross subsidy will come in, no? And that sort of will compensate, supposed to compensate for the losses that DISCOM will experience if it goes in open access in a big manner, ain't it?
Okay.
Can I
add to that? Can
Yes,
I add to that?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, when open access takes place, then there is an additional surcharge which is determined by the commission for standing of power due to the consumer moving out. So that additional surcharge compensates, which is different for different categories of consumers depending on the cross subsidization. So when a consumer moves out, he sees that even after the additional surcharge, is he getting cheaper power by going outside. So to some extent, the losses of the DISCOM are, mitigated by the charging of the additional surcharge, which covers the stranded power as well as the cross subsidy. So I would say that yes, there are losses, but they are mitigated by this surcharge which takes place.
Okay.
There are cross subsidy surcharge, there is an additional surcharge. So to that extent, the DISCOM is compensated by the consumer going out in open access.
Yeah.
So I think we are running a bit out of time. My heartfelt thanks to each one of you, Chandra Madam, Amal Sinha ji, PK Sinha ji, and Mr. Nair has already left. But thanks a lot for taking out time for this wonderful discussion. We really appreciate this, and I would also like to thank the members of the audience for taking out time to attend this particular webinar. My thanks are also due to my colleague Sudhir for making the wonderful presentation. With this, possibly we will close today. All the recipients, all the attendees will receive a mail asking for a feedback. If any questions which are still unanswered, you may please respond to that. To all the panelists, once more, thanks again. With this, we will close it. Bye, and we will touch base very soon. Thanks a lot. Have a good evening ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah. So then we can close now. Yeah.